Welcome back. So we're pretty close to trying to stick this engine in the Ranger here. Right here in front of us is a crossmember 2 motor mounts that I designed in CAD and had them laser cut and bent, and then I welded them up. So we have this crossmember that bolts into the factory location, has the perch for the new transmission, and then these are the motor mounts that line up to factory location on the Ecoboost, and then utilize the factory mounting position on the Ranger 4-cylinder. So in order to achieve this, I took the engine and the Ranger into my work and used a CMM, which is pretty much an arm with a probe on it, and you can create planes and points and put it into CAD. So I did the engine. Oh, my hand's pretty close on this here. Anyway, did the engine and the Ranger engine compartment on that and blended them both together, and that's how I built this. So we're going to see how I did on that. I am a little concerned on the oil pan clearance, and I'm pretty sure the alternator is going to hit the steering box, but we will find that out. Did a little test fit on the motor mounts. They are pretty good. This one here, I'm going to have to radius. Stupid me, I should have put radiuses on to begin with, but this corner down here is a little tight, so I'll just go ahead and do a grind on that, probably put a radius on that one there. My philosophy is any corner that's not welded should have a radius, and I was just, being lazy and didn't put a radius on that. Anyway, so got those test fit. I'm going to crawl underneath and see how my cross member fits. Hopefully that is good. We'll compare it here to the... set it down here. So black one is the factory Ranger one with the 5-speed, and then the one I made. So it should bolt into the factory points and it'd be the right elevation for the transmission to create the right angle and all that jazz. So just getting ready to put the engine in the truck here. Trying to snake it down in here. We got our motor mounts installed. How to do a little bit of trimming. This is probably going to come out again later, so later I'll touch this up, make it a little bit better looking. Anyway, had some interference on there, but that's just the way stuff it goes. This side here fit pretty good, so we're gonna snake her down in there and see what hits. Well, needless to say, this thing was not fitting with the transmission on it. So, time for round 2. Well, unfortunately, the engine's not fitting with our current configuration. These motor mounts on the factory 4-cylinder are pretty fat, and therefore they're hitting on the engine when we're trying to put this thing down in there. This side we're hitting on our engine perch on the engine and the actual block. And on this side here, behind that rag there is the oil filter housing. I guess we could take that off, but I don't really want to. I don't have a gasket for that. So that's one option. The other option is to take those motor mounts off and get something different. So we'll have some thinking to do and figure it out. I'm going to have to pull this engine back out. Well, the engine's in there. I kind of got carried away and just started cutting away the body panel and firewall until it cleared, and next thing we know, we just got a frame left. No, this was an extra frame I had. It's actually a 94 Ranger. Anyway, it had a 2.3 in it, so a lot of the stuff is the same. And I was having issues getting the engine in with the body on, so I figured I'd check clearances first with just the frame, and just brought this one in here and bolted my stuff on, and kind of pleased and kind of had some clearance issues that I knew about. The cross member fits in there nice and good. It lines all up with the motor mounts. You gotta see them in there. So that's good. Had to move this drain tube over a little bit. It's flexible, so that wasn't too bad. I don't have a steering box on here, but I'm pretty sure it's going to interfere with that alternator. And then we removed the oil filter thing from this, but if we go to put it back in here, we have some interference right in there. So there's two options. We can cut this motor mount here, the frame side, or there's actually some companies that make a remote oil filter adapter that bolts right on there. So have to think about that. And I guess the worst thing is the fact that the oil pan is resting on this crossmember here. And see if we can get a good shot underneath here. And it wants to share the same location as one of the I-beams. It's already marked on there, some clearance. And I'm going to have to cut my oil pan and fab up some clearance there. Typical that I just installed a brand new oil pan and sealed it all up, and I'm going to have to take it off. Because this car that I've got the engine out of was wrecked. And I found out that there was a hole in the oil pan after 5 quarts of oil spilt onto the shop floor. Gonna have some fun welding cast aluminum. Fortunately, this oil pan has not had oil in it, so it's not oil impregnated that much. But this is probably gonna end up pulling the engine up and down several times, cutting the oil pan, seeing how it clears stuff, and then put it back down. I would have attempted to use this one here, but not only is that window out, got a crack there. There's a crack running up through there. There's a crack there. And a crack there, so it's just not even worth messing with. But one thing about these oil pans, they are structural. The back of the bell housing does bolt up to the bottom there. So it's not like you can just use a sheet metal oil pan for this whole thing. We're going to try maintaining some of the structural integrity and just kind of flatten this off and probably raise it up right there. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. Well, I got the oil pan off, and you can kind of see the line I traced here for clearance. Got the engine propped up here. The old oil pan sitting in here. Not exactly sure what that part is. I don't know if it's some sort of oil pump or maybe a counterbalance shaft, because I'm sure the oil pump is up in there. But anyway, so I did a quick mock-up with that. I don't think we'll run into that, but we might have to modify the oil pickup. So what I'm going to do here is going to take and transfer the lines onto this here from the other oil pan, and then bolt it back up, or just set it up on here and see how it interferes with stuff. A little bit of an angle grinder and a sawzall, and we have us a modified oil pan. That's the chunk that would be taken out, along with what's not cracked out there. So, kind of leaves us a small sump, but it's what we have to deal with. Now to bolt it on there and see how it fits. So kind of like I suspected, we're clearing that stuff up in there, but that oil pickup is sticking out a bit there. So we'll have to get a little creative on moving it back. So I went ahead and bolted that oil pan back in and double checked the clearance before I went ahead and solidified the measurements. You can see here it's a little tight, but definitely got some clearance on that. So we don't got any actual videos of the fabrication, but I took some photos along the way. And here's the new oil pan that I cut up and did a rough cut on that, and we went ahead and put it on a mill and machine down to the actual point that I wanted. That way everything was parallel and a nice, smooth, consistent surface to weld to. So now that the machining is done, got a nice clean surface, it's all square to work with, went ahead and took some sheet aluminum, cut it up to roughly the right size, then set it down and traced out the silhouette, and then cut that so it fit all good in there. Then went ahead and tacked that all up. And then I went and bolted it back on the Ranger to check clearance. Made sure that I had all the clearances where I wanted, make sure it wasn't going to hit the suspension or the cross member when it was all set down in there. And it turned out pretty good, so then I took it back to the shop and welded it all up. So once this was all welded up, I switched over to modifying the oil pickup. And what I did on that was lengthen the tube about an inch. I did that by actually cutting it and sleeving with a larger diameter tube because I couldn't find one that was the right diameter to match the actual oil pickup. And then I cut the supporting bracket and then kind of did like a jog over on that so it would still bolt up to the existing bolt hole. And then when I did that, I realized that there was a little dimple on the bottom of that oil pan that was going to be in the way. And so what I did is put it back into the mill and machine that out of it. Just kind of plunge cut, got that out, and then took a little round piece of aluminum and welded it back in. And with that, it all fit perfectly. The oil pickup cleared and had plenty of room for that. So I went ahead and siliconed it on and torqued it down to spec. So overall, I'm pretty happy with how this oil pan turned out. We got the clearance we need, and we didn't sacrifice too much on the oil volume. Anyway, next step we're going to do is actually bolt it into the frame and then set the Ranger cab on top of that. That'll be on the next episode. If you're liking this series, you're liking the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and also the bell notification so that you get notifications when I post new content. Anyway, talk to you guys later.